I'll fly, and I'll fly into the end of the sky. So I'll be the one who doesn't have to say goodbye.
Hi guys, I'm Asher with this Halloween 2022 video called Return to Bittersweet Apple Acres, MLP Fanfic Reading, Part 2, Grimdark. It is 37 minutes and 10 seconds long. Oh, yes. Okay, Bittersweet Apple Acres Part 2. Wow. I can't believe I said that in my previous reaction. Kind of called it, didn't I? In a way, ish. Kind of, sort of. Yeah. Okay, my recollection that they are trapped within the confines of the apple orchard or the barn, and we got a very demonic Applejack. I don't know if any pony's gonna get killed in this particular video. All we know, their days are numbered. I mean, we do know that at least one escaped, but how does it lead to that? What happens in the middle? What happens at the start of this conflict? Let's find out. Let's get this reaction started in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Not intended for kids. Viewer discretion is advised in a court of law. So I'd be watching too much Cops when I was younger. Too much Cops. Flora, where are you?
Flora!
Get your margarine! Sorry. Sparrow presents. Oh, going to creepy music.
I jump as a familiar voice rouses me out of the flashback of memories. I had a wish to just forget.
You can't forget anything like this.
To that horrible place that we had all somehow resurrected from history through our foolish actions of antagonizing a foundation.
Because the rumors or the stories were true.
The entirety of the remainder of history and time.
And space. Get Doctor Who's.
Of that headless demon. And every macabre detail. Her blood-stained fur. Her insidious laughter and taunting.
And the neck.
And the overwhelming smell of death and copper in that single space.
Copper? Oh, that's like a when you smell copper, it's like a...
Just like the scar from me trying to hope...
Copper is like the smell of... Is it the smell of blood if it dries up or something?
Could take place.
That's a common smell you've seen in haunted locations.
In my dark and cold room. Flora, are you okay?
She's not okay.
She says, in an attempt to get my attention. I eventually recollect myself, completely.
I do like it's telling the story from my another perspective, not from the narrator. Narrator.
She wipes her forehead of her growing sweat and sighs in relief at my response. She's absolutely stressed and grateful at the same time.
Huh?
As she addresses me again.
Yeah.
Flora.
You just suddenly spaced off and became unresponsive to everything I said.
Yeah.
What happened? Did you have a sudden blackout or flashback?
You don't want to know, mate. You don't want to know.
She knows me well. She knows just how traumatic those memories are of that night I spent in a demented Tartarus. And that they can be triggered easily with just a single word.
Are the trees dead as well?
Night. This hadn't been my first blackout. I've had several in the long year I've been stuck in this
PSD, mate. It's PSD. Post-traumatic distress syndrome or something.
Sassy knows what really is happening. That's why she's my only ally in this fuckhole facility. She
are you in the mental home?
Knows me and knows that I'm not crazy. It was a little flash.
Does she know Constein?
I lie through my teeth.
Constein will help you.
Nothing that hasn't happened before. She puts her right hoof on my shoulder and looks at me with seriousness.
It'd be okay.
Not buying my lie. I don't like lying to her, but if I told her what I really saw, I'd be forbidden to join the rest of the facility tonight for the surprise Sassy mentioned prior to my setting.
Dr. Colstein is going to go into Applejack's
You
mind.
know I'm on your side, right?
Yes.
If you need to talk about whatever is causing these dazes, I'm here to listen.
Get Dr. Colstein quick. He's going to help you, don't
but
worry.
I can't risk putting her in danger or any chance of word spreading.
Danger.
I just express a fake smile. I know, but I still need time, Sassy.
Stranger.
Bye. It's not a total.
They can take over the village, apparently.
I really don't have the strength to speak of every raw and horrid detail that occurred that night in Bittersweet Apple Hell yet.
It's a hard story to tell. Who will actually believe her, though?
I can never fix or repair back to working condition.
Does
But just like the scars on my hoof from the fence burning me,
does she believe you, though?
they are forever burned in my memories. Memories of things I never want to relive, speak of, or even think about to the day my heart finally stops. Sassy smiles in understanding, patting my shoulder.
How would you forget something like this? You can't forget someone like this. Can you?
As the door hisses closed, I return to my bed and attempt to sleep. But the flashback of the horrors of a year prior keep me awake, taking me back once again.
Cue the narrator, please. Someone's in trouble.
A scream.
No!
Violent, piercing scream.
No! Really, Sparrow?
No, the arrival of some unknown in the Apple family's farmhouse. Her left hind leg pulsing with inflammation and pain. Flora had traveled awkwardly, resulting in one of her legs getting twisted, making her an easy and defenseless target for the bloodthirsty mare on the prowl for every ounce of blood pulsing through her body.
Can Applejack can smell you then?
Whatever Tartarus she now dwelled within. She knew it was bad to scream in her current predicament, but she couldn't help it.
Because it's
She
painful.
never suffered the pain of a fractured bone. Therefore, that piercing agony was new to her. And as her leg continued to pulse waves of pain, all she could do was
Is it
scream.
broken? It must be broken then.
The area she'd arrived in was very compact and dimly lit. The only visible exit being off to the left side of the room, between two thick, rusted pipes. The floor was nothing but old, rigid straw that hurt Flora to lay upon, feeling like she were in a bed of needles.
Straw must be hard
The
then.
smell of the area was a mix between a musty cellar or attic that hadn't been entered for years, mixed with an overwhelming stench of rot, similar to walking upon a bloated corpse of an animal that had been dead for
like a dead
summer.
animal sort of thing, yeah.
Flora couldn't even smell the reeking scent, too occupied by her injury to even notice the very evident smell. She only cried and uttered the sounds of some pony in excruciating pain, grinding her teeth as she shifted to lay against the wall of her hellish abode. She couldn't walk or even attempt to put pressure on her leg, so she had to drag herself out of view.
She broke her leg or she pulled a muscle?
The movement felt like she was dragging a massive block of lead over blazing red charcoal. But she knew she had to at least try something to
try
keep
it. Yeah, you gotta try
from the serial killer on her trail.
You gotta try something, though.
Sitting back against the wall, she lay out her lower body and started to inspect her injury. Upon seeing it, she gasped. The entirety of the lower part of her back left hoof bruised and swollen. The area was a mix of green, purple, blue, and gray.
Gangrene!
From the bottom part
it's gangrene, mate, isn't it? It's infected!
And the entire area was swelled to about the size of a half-inflated balloon.
Oh?
She nearly vomited at the sight, but chose not to, resorting to attempting to calm herself down. Stress and panic would only worsen the injury, so her first step to getting to a point of
calm down
wasn't causing any further unintended damage to her wound. She took deep breaths in and out, wiping her forehead clean of sweat and eyes free of tears. It was a trick she'd learned in her sports medicine class, and with each long breath,
It's like
she could
adrenaline or
feel the
something.
pain lessening and her nerves slowing their rapid dancing. The pain was still evident, but subtle enough for her to handle with no need to grunt or scream. She was relieved at
I just noticed
allowing
putting it in the
herself to just
corner.
breathe naturally and regain full clarity on the situation at Hoof.
Yeah.
She and the others were in danger, and she had no idea where they were now in this place of unspeakable horrors. She had an injury that limited her movement in the long night still to come.
It's gonna become
and there
infected
was
if you
no
don't do
way to
something.
decrease her injury, and most critically, she was being hunted by a psychopathic mare that was out to kill her and her friends and make them personal slaves.
Has
in this
Annie
place.
gone into Applejack? Annie is in
How
Applejack.
the hell was she going to survive? Then, out of
Call
massive pain,
Dr.
doubt,
Coldstone to help.
and unadulterated fear clouding every one of her thoughts, some voice of reason spoke out and made her gasp in surprise.
No, Flora. Stop thinking negatively. The best thing you can do right now is not panic and calm down. If you assume the worst, you're dead meat for sure.
Ca-
I need to
Ha-
clear my head and figure out what
How
I
would
can
you
do
calm
to
down in a
safely
situation like this, man? How would you actually calm down?
She chastised herself in her mind. She took another long and heavy breath, calming herself down enough to be able to think clearly and smartly. She had never
I will get
been
through
in
this.
such a critical situation in her entire life, which was the main reason she'd reacted so negatively. Looking around and thinking hard about her situation, she knew that one thing was for sure,
What?
and that was that in order to survive, she was going to have to push herself harder than ever before. That included putting herself through excruciating pain in order to stay out of harm's way, and that thought alone made her nauseous.
Oh gosh.
She'd seen this kind of stuff in horror movies before, and never thought she'd possibly end up in a situation like what those movies portrayed. But she couldn't deny her harsh and cruel reality, and knew that
But
she'd have to get back
movies
up
are not
and fight
like
through her
real life,
injuries,
though.
Constant waves of pain. and
Movies are
every
not
step
like
and stride.
real life.
Staying there and crying like a fool would only end her
And there's
life
always
all the more faster, and she
creative
knew.
licensing in movies as well.
Fuck my life.
Grating her teeth and lifting herself up from the needle.
That was a good. I like the sad tone
got
there.
herself back onto her hooves. Upon the slightest pressure to her wound, she nearly lost all of her balance.
Oh
The
god.
waves of agony feeling as if she'd just been struck by a taser gun. Her stomach churned at the electrifying pulses radiating from her leg at an incomprehensible speed. Her vials starting to slink up her throat, and the nausea increasing with every second as she attempted to breathe normally. It felt as if she were lifting a 1,000-pound lead anvil as she put one of her spasming legs forward. Grunts and
So
heavy
I'm not
breaths
trying to
escaping
figure
her
how
mouth through her
how
slow
close
grated
she,
teeth with
how
each
close
movement.
she, how close she is to
One
death.
step at a time, Flora.
With one leg forward, she started with another, feeling her wound pulse like a second heartbeat, and her sight being obscured by fragments
That's like
of her unfurled
it's
body.
someone I suppose
She
broken
still
legs
pushed
before.
forward as hard as possible, her opposite non-injured back leg following her motion and dragging along the hard ground.
It's like
It felt
Walking-
like forever. But
walking
Flora
through the
eventually
pain.
succeeded, moving on to the next pair of legs. Once her injured legs started to move, she nearly lost all of her progress, a
oh,
muffled yelp escaping her throat and stopping behind her snow-white teeth.
she must be limping
Tears
as
were in
well.
her eyes, leaking down her face and dripping onto the floor of rotted straw. Moving her wounded leg was the equivalent of feeling as if some pony had stuck a heated knife through her leg and had just left it there to torture her,
Oh,
and she could barely resist screaming in agony at the agonizing sensation.
that
She
is
breathed
painful.
as if she'd just finished a marathon, saliva starting to fall from her mouth now.
Yeah, it's like like spasm sort of thing.
Just power through it. Like ripping off a band-aid.
Her self-encouragement.
So if she
was enough
lost,
to push
she
her
must be
past
like,
her much
she
evident
must be
agony,
lost then.
closing her eyes
in the
and
barn.
dragging her leg forward again. That same stabbing feeling plagued her senses and nerves yet again.
Did she just crack a bone?
Despite her leg feeling as if it were being shredded apart through a wood chipper, she pushed through it, eventually coming to the point of where she'd successfully taken one whole step. She wanted to smile.
One
at her
step
accomplishment,
for
but knew she
the
couldn't
survival,
stop now,
one step to
building
get
up the
out of
courage
there.
to take another set of steps. While it was excruciating to do it, it was the only way she'd be able to build up the ability to move throughout this maze of whatever in Tartarus existed in this demented farm or slaughterhouse.
So this, okay, must be amazing then. Okay.
Me go again.
Go on, you can do it. You could do it.
And I did go again.
That's good.
Until I could finally walk normally and the pain had become second nature. It was as if I had relived my process of learning to walk as a fool.
Process of elimination.
Balance being my enemy. It was a
Sorry,
constant
Sparrow.
pain that made the term a thorn in my side literal. Unfortunately, doing that ended up fucking my leg up. Seeing I stressed this fracture with so much pressure that it made the injury heal.
You should be in the cast, mate.
To put it simply, the bone hadn't been able to heal back to full strength because of improper treatment.
You didn't heal
It
properly.
continues to break over and over. I lost count at 50 times, and due to it happening so constantly, any more pain is nothing more than the equivalent of a pinch of a syringe.
Cool.
So I guess you can say that means I'm the only pony to not ever flinch when a bone breaks. How grim, but really
You walked through a broken bone
However,
on your legs
the
or
broken
the
bone was
hooves.
mild in comparison to what followed
Ow!
after rehabilitation.
Fuck!
Seeing that
That's
Hermes was
that's
big,
pain.
was
Those are
such an
painful.
understatement.
That's one of the painfuls. Thing out.
The correct terminology for that place is more along the lines of gargantuan, colossal, endless, eternal.
Pain.
Not to mention what had occurred within it can only be described in a few select words, but the two that come to mind the most are malefic, sinister, and
Painful.
demonic.
Yep.
But the one word that I can say describes it all
What?
is the only reason I still even remember the events of that night, minute for minute, detail for detail, and word for word. That word is traumatizing. And the traumatization only started when I found Trevor.
Traumatized. You would be traumatized for this sort of injury and this sort of a It's traumatic. Okay.
Flora had wandered for what felt like hours of going in a circle, nothing but the sight of large rusted pipes and the lingering smell of mold and rot to accompany her entire trek.
I wouldn't expect there'd be
Any trace of
pipes.
pain had all but faded in her back leg, and she was thankful that some mysterious god with a forgiving heart had spared her further dread.
Is Costa the god?
However, that didn't
Sorry.
extinguish the clear fear that was creeping through every bone in her body at the lack of any sign of additional occupants within this monolith of a maze, causing her heart to ache at the
How big is this
possibility that
place?
Her closest friends may already be eternal occupants of Sweet Apple Hell. She didn't even want to think that possibility could be true, but she had to come to the full realization.
You gotta think of something,
that
though,
this
haven't
place
you?
wasn't fantasy or anything like her world.
This
This
life's
place
a
was alive
fantasy.
and truly evil. Its life force kept alive by the blood and fear of any pony who dare enter its domain. Reality and logic
So it's
were
this
irrelevant,
place is
and
kind
its
of cut
demented
off
leader
from the
was no
from.
exception.
It's cut off from
She
the
still
outside
struggled
world.
to
Then
believe that she'd seen a headless body speak words from a non-existent mouth and walk straight as if it could see clearly. Her heart had sunk at the sight
I can
of
see
the infamous
clearly
feeding
as
mark
the
of 3
moon
red apples.
rises.
Having to blink twice to be absolutely sure what she had seen was real.
There's a blood
Her
moon
injuries
in
were
the
real.
sky. Sorry.
The danger was real. The demented mare that had been beheaded by Crimson Flash 20 years prior was
What are we?
alive
We're
and
an angry
peaceful
mob.
as she had been when she and her family still had reigned over.
What are we?
Earth.
An angry mob. Mop.
Every one of her beliefs about the tragedy that Princess Fleur had attempted to bury with all of her grief had been proven true.
Yeah.
The Bittersweet Apple Massacre had
Was-
occurred in history, and
Yes.
just as Crimson Flash had stated, instead of learning from the past, Ponykind, by burying a horrid truth, had been doomed to repeat mistakes.
So, don't.
It's exactly why Flora and her friends.
It's like
were found
it's
fighting
just
for their
a
lives,
myth, a
and it was only
legend.
their fault for
But
meddling
it only
with
takes
greater
one
force than they
to
could have imagined.
Research it.
Rounding
It only
what
takes
felt
one.
like the billionth corner, Flora came to a larger opening, glowing an eerie yellow light. As
It's a trap.
unsettling as it was, Flora
It's
actually
always
felt
a
like
trap.
she'd made some progress in this endless labyrinth of horrors. And upon walking into the massive opening, her ears perked at an eruption in the silence.
What?
The sound of a muffled cry. Flora's heart skipped a beat at the sound, the voice sounding more feminine than that of a male stallion or, sickeningly enough, colt. The cry seemed higher than any sound Sarah could produce, but Flora wanted to
Is that
be
Thomas
absolutely
crying?
sure, working toward the sound's source. It came from the far side of the area, eventually leading Flora to the far north wall.
What?
Flora
Where is it?
had
Who is
heard
it?
that victims of the Apple family had been found within walls as stuffed trophies upon the full investigation of the farmhouse.
It's sure it's not
That
Apple Bloom as a
sent
ghost.
shivers down her spine. Luckily, she found a handle that slid open the wall upon scaling the wall for anything to allow access to the victim. Sliding
Who's
it
the-
open, she was
Oh.
met with a single wall, where a lone mare hung on the wall.
Oh.
Upon closer inspection, Flora nearly lost her stomach,
Oh God.
4 large and rusted nails being the only thing holding her to the wall.
Man, it's like
Streaks of
Jesus.
dry blood stained her fur from down where her hooves had been impaled with the nails.
Oh, that's.
Along with
Oh
large
my
pools of
gosh, that's
blood visible from
painful.
the inside of her mouth, staining her lower jaw. The rag covering her mouth was stained with tons of her crimson life support, and her eyes were bloodshot and swollen from Celestia knows what. She had a messy mane of blonde, stained with coagulated blood, dirt, and whatever else her torturer had stained her with, and her
Oh.
light pink fur that covered the majority of her body reeked what Flora assumed was a mix between death and piss.
Oh,
She looked
fuck!
horrible, and upon her noticing Flora, it was clear that her voice had long since faded away after screaming and begging endlessly to nothing but the rotted wood and creaking pipes. Her voice was only a raspy
You're
croak
stuck
that
there in your
resembled
own
the sound of some
feces.
pony taking in a long and weak breath. It was just audible enough for Flora to have caught, but only that and nothing more.
Shh, shh, shh. I'm going to get you out of here.
Flora informed low enough.
How you
for
gonna get
only
nails
her
out
and
the
Jane
out
Doe
the
to
out the
hear,
thing then?
starting to look around for something to dislodge the nails. She eyed her surroundings carefully, only to find no tool to remove the nails, to which she cussed in her mind at, knowing the only tool
I just
she
said
had
that.
that could potentially work was her teeth. The
Oh
thought of
my,
pulling
oh
an
my,
inch
oh
of
my,
the
oh my.
gory wound didn't even cross her mind as she positioned herself at the mare's uppermost legs first, digging her muzzle into the clearly infected flesh wound and working to grab the nail head with her front teeth. The mare
Oh my
grunted
gosh, that's-
mildly under the pressure.
That
but
must
allowed
help. That
Flora
must
to
be
just
difficult.
continue her
That must be
effort.
very difficult to do.
Laura mainly focused on just getting her teeth on the nail head, eventually managing to dig deep enough to grip and start to pull the rusted object from the wound.
Oh,
Blood started to leak from the scabs that had been reopened by Flora's
put something.
actions,
Put
and
dressing
with
on that.
extreme force, the nail started
That
to
hoof now.
having come loose from the wall.
That's gonna get infected. That's gonna get infected
Laura
now.
wasn't sure if she was just wasting her time, but the fact the fellow pony was in disarray and potentially set up for much worse was enough to make her act regardless.
Yes.
At the sight of Jane Doe's leg collapsing from the wall to her side, along with the nail's stiffness dissipating, Laura knew the nail was out. She spat out the nail and turned back to the victim, noticing she had nearly dislodged the other hoof just by the use of gravity. Her body weight leaning forward had nearly been enough to pull her other leg from the wall, to which Flora assisted, grabbing her other front leg and yanking it from the wall. It didn't take much force, the leg falling forward almost instantaneously, Flora working fast to catch the upper body before it fell forward hard onto the floor. She succeeded and lowered the mare onto the ground, surprised that the mare didn't even attempt to stand. Flora didn't object though.
Is it painful to stand?
The was too mentally and physically exhausted to do anything at all. Another clear sign of her exhaustion was the fact that she had barely even jumped or made a noise from the first nail being pulled out. Meaning
I don't think she's eaten these as well though.
Or similar to Flora's rehabilitation, the pain had just become mute and non-existent to her from the countless injuries she'd taken.
Oh dear.
It was a sickening thought that she didn't even want to believe true, but as she started on her back legs, coming free with very little effort, it became very apparent that pain wasn't even existent to this poor pony. The nails dug deeper down her legs from her being unable to balance her own body, and she hadn't even flinched or yelped at the newly dug wounds. All she did was emit those same raspy croaks.
You must have torn some tendons as well then.
Once lived a happy life outside of this place. They sent shivers down Flora's spine each time as she finally managed to free her back legs from the wall, leading her to help her to her hooves.
Miss, I need you to try and use whatever strength you have to stand up against my side.
How?
Flora instructed softly, to which the mare didn't even respond to.
Flora
tried again, still keeping her voice low enough to not draw attention from afar, only to still receive no response.
She's too distorted.
Dead amber eyes, cloaked with a fog that made her seem dead.
Who is
Flora
this
still
then?
didn't give up, recognizing the behavior as a result of trauma and paranoia, due to the fact that she'd been through how many
who's on there then?
Tortures and horrors.
Has someone gone there before them?
With incurable trauma. She tried again, this time putting her muzzle right next to the mare's ear to give her better clarity.
Ma'am, please. We need to move as fast as possible.
She instructed once again, relieved at the sudden action of a flicker of the ear she was speaking into. That followed with the mare's left eye meeting Flora's gaze, and the croaks now turning into raspy grunts, growing in speed with each second.
She's in pain!
Upon hearing that the grunts were muffled, only then did Flora realize that she had forgotten to remove the bloody rag from her muzzle, working quickly to untie the rag and remove it from her face. However, upon the sight that followed the unveiling, Flora's eyes burst to the size of dinner plates, and her right hoof covered her muzzle in horror.
Has she got a mouth?
Now she knew why the mare really couldn't say anything.
She got no tongue.
Her mouth was a bloody mess.
Oh!
Her gums bruised and swollen, and where her teeth should have been was only sharp and jagged remains of what used to be teeth. However,
and now that's torture!
For her eyes
that is, oh my gosh, that's painful.
The entire bottom of her mouth being nothing but a crimson abyss. Her tongue had been cut out, ridding her of any speech or voice for the rest of her life.
Oh my god!
Blood turned to ice instantly, and she quickly lost her stomach on the floor. Never before had she seen something so horrifying and tragic.
That is Applejack's doing, isn't it?
Horror movies and read
Applejack, where are you?
But this was what true horror was.
Yes!
Immediately, every single fear she'd received from a scary story or movie was extinguished and replaced by this sight alone. Her body excreted all of her Nightmare Night delights violently, up until there was nothing left, and all that followed were coughs.
She's gonna die.
That sight would never leave her memories like a tattoo to skin, and as she turned back to the mare, she quickly did her best to recollect herself. She could see tears gliding down Jane Doe's cheeks, to which she wiped away gently and returned to her original goal. However, just as she
is she an adult pony then?
a familiar, sinister sound met her ears. The same laughter she'd heard upon her arrival there, along with the echo of hoof steps.
This is fucking brutal, Sparrow! Seriously?
Her head to the middle of the
Very
room,
brutal!
a figure stood with
But
her
fun.
lasso secure around
Fun.
her neck. Bittersweet Applejack found her, and was there to claim her first eternal torture slave.
Well, well, looks like I found you, Goldilocks. And here I was thinking that you and your little group of nimwits would actually be challenging for me. Looks like you're just as weak and stupid as the others who have dared to tread here out of curiosity.
Applejack spoke.
Chaos equals the pony.
Another chuckle escaped her lips as she started to walk a little closer, to which Flora just stared in horror at. She was frozen and stuck in place with no idea of what to even do.
Or say.
I see you found my lovely little pet. Cute, ain't you? I call her tongueless or mute, seeing she started doing everything I said after I shut her little protests and complaints up with just the slightest little yank.
Oh my god,
Bloody
Applejack.
mess it was, but it was worth the effort, seeing I got myself an obedient pet. And
What about Bloody Mane?
And life supply made for a large profit. Every pony wins and is happy in the end.
Is it?
The stories Flora had heard could not ever have amounted to what she was hearing.
We need to kill Applejack.
Of a truly dedicated serial
Or
killer that put
get a
bit
priest,
of
get
passion
Colstein,
into craft
or get
in the most
someone.
invented and twisted ways imaginable.
She's fucking crazy. It's like she doesn't even care or think about any ponies of herself. Like she's not capable of emotional regret. I need to run.
You're fighting a lost cause, but you got to
There
do
was only
something.
one way out, and it was blocked by the psychopath now less than 10 yards from her. Her eyes searched for another alternative exit, but there was no other possible way or
No, but you're trapped in there for an
What was she going
eternity.
to do?
I don't know.
No way out, Goldilocks.
No way out.
Only if you still plan to go through with your pointless effort to save that lost cause. She was caught and bound here a long time ago, sugar, and saving her is nothing more than adding extra weight to your back. She's already dead and trapped forever, and soon you will be too.
Ha 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 ha.
She was no more than a foot from Flora now, and the evident smell of copper and rot was enough to tell. The sight of the headless monster appeared like a human to an ant from Flora's perspective.
Applejack's
and it was
headless.
Intimidating beyond belief.
Nearly headless
She knew
Applejack.
she needed to run, to do something, but she couldn't move and felt as if she were frozen in place like a concrete statue.
It's shock.
The
It's
shadow of Applejack now blanketed her body under the dim lights, and all she could do was close her eyes and pray to wake up in her bedroom to the sound of her clock alarm any second.
no, it's not gonna happen.
It's just a bad dream. It's just a bad dream. It's just a bad dream. It's just a bad dream.
This is not a dream.
Welcome to the slaughterhouse, slave.
She awaited some sort of agonizing pain to purge her body, her
But-
eyes still shut and her voice quivering in absolute fear.
Oh,
Every sound seemed to fade away like the end to a music track, essentially putting Flora into a state where her mind had become a dark and eternal void.
oh
Something
dear.
she assumed as purgatory or limbo, up until something broke her from it.
What?
Flora, get up! We've gotta go!
Hello, Sparrow.
A voice shouted in pleading. The voice was familiar, and as all sound returned to her, it was clear who she had heard.
Who?
Opening her eyes, she saw that Applejack had been attacked by Trevor, and he had her in a momentary stun.
Oh! Trevor to the rescue!
We need to go! She's not going to be down for long. We need to put some distance between her and us.
How'd you overpower Protect?
He yelled bluntly, grabbing her hoof and pulling her up hastily. Flora caught the urgency, But despite the urgency of the situation, she couldn't just leave Applejack's pet to suffer.
I can't just leave her
No,
here.
I don't. No, you got to leave her. You got to leave her. You got to leave her.
Flora objected, pointing to the floor. Trevor grunted at that, having just heard the truth about said mare from Applejack's own mouth while eavesdropping just out of view.
Ah, didn't you hear her? She's already unsavable, Flora. We can't
Yes!
save her, and unless we get out of here, we're next.
Flora frowned, holding her ground in return.
That moves me. Even though I've never played it, it's Silent Hill. That my music reminds me of Silent Hill.
Not here, Flora.
I expect to hear bloody air raid sirens in the background.
My mind is made up, so either leave or put her on your back. You have plenty of strength to carry her.
At least you can bury her.
Trevor couldn't win, so with a very audible grunt of annoyance, he made his choice.
Okay.
Ugh.
Fine.
You win, Flora.
You win.
Quickly, Trevor lifted Jane Doe up onto his back and settled her to where she wouldn't fall off. Then he turned back to the exitway and signaled Flora to start running.
Run!
Flora
Run!
listened
Run!
and took off as fast as possible, taking off back into the labyrinth.
But
She
I
made
don't
it
think
around
you
the
can
first
get out,
corner
though.
Up until a sudden scream made her stop and skid to a halt.
what?
She turned around to where she could see the wide opening again. But what she saw immediately brought tears to her eyes and caused her stomach to turn.
What?
Trevor was stopped in place, and from his back up the entire back of his neck had been impaled with hundreds of thin crimson strands, breaking
Oh.
through out from the underside of his body. Massive amounts of his blood was already pouring onto the floor from his hunch,
He's gonna die then.
and all Flora could do was stare at the sight that had been caused by her and her only.
What?
Trevor mumbled in pain, frozen in place from the hundreds of piano string-like strands that had him pinned. All he could move was his eyes, meeting Flora in a stare that only spoke.
You're losing a lot of blood there. You're gonna die, mate. Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate.
Run.
Just run.
He mumbled before all of the strands simultaneously shifted and ripped Trevor's stock and muscular body into nothing but chunks of pony meat of several different sizes.
Oh my God!
Flora
Sparrow!
screamed, her body being showered in Trevor's blood and her emotions going into a spiral of chaos as she followed Trevor's last request and ran like hell back into the labyrinth.
And now that's brutal. That is like, oh my God. Oh, that's disgusting, Sparrow. Seriously? Right. To be continued. Okay, that was Halloween 2022. Return to Bittersweet Apple Acres MLP Fanfic Reading Part 2, GRIMDARK. Okay, let's backtrack a moment. Okay, the start of the story that she was kind of weak in terms of in excruciating pain. I had a feeling that she or her hoof was broken, and to move or even tempting to move when you've got a broken leg is going to be painful. But it's the we call it the adrenaline, it's adrenaline kicking in that, especially you see when people trying to escape a collapsing building or something, or burning building, that you just run. Even when you got a broken leg, you just get out of there. She was doing okay. She managed to get moving, but at the same time, she couldn't actually escape, really. No. She cannot really escape. You're trapped in the maze, which doesn't help matters at all. Not at all. you're just trapped in that a void of a barn. Then she finds this John Doe, and expecting it's an adult. I don't know. It could have been a pony. Not a pony. It could be a filly with candy, but I'm not particularly sure. I did say it could have been Appleblom, but I think it was Appleblom. Just a random pony from the village. Maybe heard about the stories as well. Decided to investigate it, stories, and she also fell victim. I think she might have gone in there alone actually. So she fell victim of the Applejack's wrath. So Voldemort's happy. So yeah. Then her other friend, I keep forgetting the name. I don't know why. Somehow overpowered Applejack in a way of knocking her conscious, maybe. But you see, she hasn't got a physical form, or has she? Applejack. Anyway, maybe it was Applejack's plan all along for able to do this, but maybe Applejack planted it or knew that this was going to happen and had to set something up. So what he was going to do, he will have to suffer the consequences. And he didn't want to take the pony, maybe because it was going to be a bit burden and she just wanted her friend to escape, but wasn't having any of it in a way. She wasn't going to have any of it. And the way he died, oh my god, it's like he was chopped up in a blink of an eye or something. An eye for an eye. So he lost a lot of blood, and probably I don't know what it was. I was picturing like something that will chop his body up or squeeze his body, and what happened is it's like the pressure of like a meat presser, just squeeze the body or something. It just turned into a pony matter, just pony bits everywhere, and he had no choice. He had no choice. He knew he was going to die. He knew probably messed up or something or fucked up, but one thing, run, and he died instantly. And now that was awful. That was awful. And now we got pony being. I was imagining the pony was on the cross like Jesus. And with nails, I'm like, oh, that's painful. I'm thinking, he had the worst treatment. He had the other pony, John Doe. Okay, it was torture. It was painful. It was traumatic for her. But the other one was instant death. Sorry for your loss, but there's one down and so many to go. Who's gonna go next? Thomas' character, or that young filly, or the young pony? He hasn't got long to live. Who could it be? Are we gonna find more ponies trapped down there? We don't know, but we will find out next time. Well, on that note, hopefully you like this reaction video as I do, and I'll see you next time. Oh, yes.
And I'll fly until the end.